Good morning and welcome to a Friday morning edition of Coffee with Rich. As you can tell, I'm not in my normal studio. I'm actually on the road today in Columbus, Ohio. Go Buckeyes. And this morning I'll be joined by Dan Brady. Dan, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
As you know, I got to do some sponsor reads to pay for this whole show that we have going on here. So let's talk about the first sponsor we have is the Bob XL by Century Martial Arts. And what's funny is I pulled up here yesterday, Dan. I was getting out of my car and I looked over and there's two young women taking a smoke break right in front of their Bob in their backyard. So they were beating the crap out of Bob, stopped to smoke a cigarette, and then took after it again. Absolutely true story. So I was kind of looking at that like, word's getting out. Bob XL is an amazing tool. Take your strike game to the next level. Take your shooting game to the next level. Check out the Bob XL by Century Martial Arts. All of the amazing sponsors I'm going to talk about this morning, you can easily find on the AmericanWarriorShow.com. Looking for a great holster? Training with some federal agents recently, and they were all like, what kind of holster are you using? I'm like, well, let me tell you about it. It's the Precision Holster Ultra Appendix Holster by PrecisionHolsters.com. Please check them out. What kind of belt you wearing, Rich? Let me tell you, it is the EDC Tactical Belt by Precision Holsters. And for watching this morning, you can get a deep discount as well as free shipping. They have a lifetime, no questions asked guarantee. And Mike and I both use them or we wouldn't be talking about it. Matter of fact, speaking of Mr. Mike Seeklander, not sure if he's going to be on this morning, but recently I got to watch some of the video footage from his and Rob Latham's class, the Bigger Circle. And one of the things, they were both wearing Precision holsters. So I'd say that's a pretty doggone and good endorsement for me. Look, we got some folks on. Let's go and welcome them to the show. We got 18 people joining us already, Dan. Got Will Parker up there in beautiful Montana, coin number 800. If you want to find out what a coin number is, you're going to have to check out AmericanWarriorSociety.com and find out if becoming a member of our self-defense community is the right thing for you. We have Zach is on. Good morning, Zach. Mr. Brian Wall, former Marine, Semper Fi. He says, good morning, gentlemen. Coin number 2031 from Mississippi. Zach is on. Gerald is on. Jesse, good morning up there in Michigan. Tom is on. Good morning, Tommy. Tim is on. Alan, Tammy is on. Tammy, I'm at your house right now. Good to see you. Let's talk about our last couple sponsors and we'll get into the show. Mountain Man Medical, makers of the trauma kit that we have put together with them. Brian McLaughlin over there, former Navy corpsman, served with the Marines in Afghanistan, now is the head trainer over at Mountain Man Medical. He has helped us put together an amazing trauma kit that's going to keep you and your family safer. Please check out that code-branded American Warrior Society trauma kit. And it looks like Mr. Mike Seeklander is on, as is Corey Johnson. He says, good morning from Knoxville. Good morning, Corey. 26 people on with us live. Dan, I think we've got all of our amazing sponsors taken care of this morning. Well, I've left one out. Appalachian Standard, makers of the finest CBD products that money can possibly buy. I'm very honored to have them as one of our sponsors on the show because Jesse and I served in the Marines together. He is an amazing man, has a wonderful family, and they are growing some amazing products. They're true artisan hemp growers in Asheville, North Carolina. And if you want to find out the benefits CBD might offer you and your family, please check out apphemp.com. So, Dan, let me read your bio, my brother, and we'll get into the show.
All right.
Dan Brady is a former Infantry Marine currently employed full-time with the Department of Defense as a police officer, primarily involved in training. He's been a cop for over 20 years. As a side project, he is an instructor with Apache Solutions LLC, primarily concerned with self-defense use of a handgun. He holds instructor certifications from the NRA, Handgun Combatives LLC, Blackwater, and Modern Samurai Project. He's trained with a variety of other regional and national stage instructors and state and federal agencies as well. He is currently in pursuit of being a good dad, aren't we all? A decent husband, a passable gardener, and an amateur Jujitsu practitioner. He's also working on becoming a masterclass shooter in the USPSA Carry Optics Division. Good morning, Dan. Welcome, brother.
Good morning, Rich. How are you?
Better than I deserve. Thanks to the 29 folks that are joining us. Please like and hit that share button. Our good friend, Dr. T.C. Fuller, is on. This is coin number 1620 from South Carolina. So, Dan, what does your impressive bio overlook, sir?
I wouldn't call it impressive. You had Mike Seeklander on for what was that, Monday?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you can wave him off. I can't wave him off. So I would say the only thing it really doesn't highlight is how much non-range time I have put into the pursuit of this particular subject matter. The reading, the studying, the various rabbit holes you tend to go down as you go through a lifetime project of research and study. The amount of time that you spend finding new material and vetting it, seeing if it's worth anything, see if it helps you in any way. The fortunate part of having people to mentor you, of having people who are a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, tends to help shortcut those sorts of things. But just in the amount of time and money I've put into books, magazines, back when print media was a little bit more prevalent. You and I are both old enough to have done a lot of looking at things prior to the internet being the research juggernaut that it is today.
I don't think that people appreciate that, man. I'm so glad you said that. There's a couple different things I want to, different avenues I want to go down that with you. But, back in the early 90s, you would have to get Paladin Press sent these, they had these books.
Yep.
And they were one of the only publishers doing the shooting books. And Mike Seeklander and I, of course, were passing around this, John Shaw's book, You Can't Miss, Bill Wilson's book, Brian Enos. Book. Yeah, man. I mean,
Beyond Practical Shooting. I have a well dog-eared copy of it.
It's phenomenal.
Sitting somewhere.
And there was like one video that Rob Latham had did where he was shooting some steel, and I think it was an advertisement for a Dillon press back in the maybe late 80s or early 90s. But there was no YouTube, man. You had to seek out somebody that was levitating on a mountainside somewhere in Arizona to find out these shooting secrets. People take it for granted today.
Yeah, it's I can't even. I mean, buying VHS tapes out of the back of Handguns magazine, $9.99 plus shipping and handling for a VHS tape, so that I could watch Brian Enos or Mike Seeklander or Rob Latham or Todd Jarrett or whoever it happened to be back then. Fortunately, some of those guys have stuck around long enough and used the technology that has come about. And
and who was that put out was it Jerry Barnhart put out the Burner series of?
The Burner series.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, phenomenal stuff, but you had to know a guy who knew a guy or wait till the gun show came back to town to try to buy some of that stuff.
That is true. One of the things that sort of thing kind of let me understand fairly early on was that there is so much information available, even back then, even before the proliferation of the internet, that if you're going to teach something, if you're going to enter into the world of being an instructor, specialization is where it's at. I don't think that you can get enough depth to be an instructor in something in a in that broader sense. So my specialization really is the everyday carry handgun and the duty handgun. Everything else I have a decent basis of knowledge in, but I don't think it's deep enough to really teach. Wide range teachers who are individuals who offer everything from precision rifle to backup handgun. I find it hard to imagine that there is enough depth, unless they're 85 years old, to really instruct that well.
I 100% agree with you. That's a great point. I got a couple of things here, Dan. We got folks asking questions here. Where in the world is Rich Brown? It's like, where's Waldo this morning, right? I'm in Ohio. Go Buckeyes. with our good friends Tammy. Jason is on from North Central Kansas. My brother Jeff Brown down there in Key West. He splashes his boat in the water today, Dan. So good luck with that, Jeff. He's been remodeling a big 41-foot Morgan. Can't wait to get down there for a visit. Johnny is on, says, good morning from Kentucky. I have Andy Stanford's book on combat shooting. That is great. And Gunjitsu podcast, my professor and coach, Cody Hudson, is on. Good morning, Cody. An amazing jujitsu practitioner. I'm lucky to get to train with you. You mentioned reading. I want to talk about that because it's not something I normally ask my guests, but like you, Dan, I'm Mike Seekland and I both read a lot. What are you currently reading, and what have you read that really influenced you?
I just finished Vark Freeborn's book, Violence of Mind, not that long ago. Have you read that?
I have not. A lot of people have said I should. What are your thoughts?
It's a very, very interesting book. It comes at the subject matter that we are talking about from a very, very different perspective, and I think people get a lot of value out of that. I don't want to kind of give away any secret sauce that he's got going on there, but he came into the training world from basically a felon perspective, and the journey that he got, or the journey he had getting to the training world, was pretty interesting to read about.
Yeah, I understand that he stabbed somebody or something like that and almost killed him, or perhaps I'm mistaken. But
Yes,
I probably need to get him on the show. I've had enough people talk about his content, and I would love to talk to someone. Matter of fact, there was a gentleman, I won't say his name. He at one point had agreed to come on. He had killed someone and fled from Las Vegas to Spain and lived there for a number of years hiding, and then was finally caught up with by Interpol and did his 12 years for the murder and is now out. Just to kind of talk about life in prison, life on the run. I think that would be interesting for our guests to hear that. I'm sorry, our audience. So tell me, how did you get into shooting? I mean, I know you were a Marine, Dan, but how did you get into shooting? Of course, we may be having technical difficulties. Wouldn't be coffee with Rich without it. And maybe I've lost Dan. There we go. Dan, can you hear me? I do not hear you, sir. Are you there? Can you hear me? Yeah, give me a test 1, 2, 3. I do not hear you, sir. Try it again. If you can hear me, Dan, give me a thumbs up. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. No? Okay, you can't hear me. Is he muted? I'm not sure. Here's what I'm going to do, Dan. I'm going to remove you and then send you back in. Apologies to the 30 folks watching us live. I'm going to head and remove, and then we'll send him another one. Let's see. Can you hear me now? TC says Marines and technology, always fun. Yeah, isn't it? Isn't it great? The joys of the interwebs. And while we wait to get Dan back on, let's do this. What are some of you that are on this morning that are also readers? Tell me what you're currently reading and why, and we'll discuss it while we try to get Dan back on. And we'll try to do that as quickly as possible. The joys of live stream. Alan Kelly says, No Second Place Winner by Bill Jordan is a great read. I have not read that. I know Dr. Fuller has a book out. I'm sure that he could take this opportunity to plug his amazing book for those that have not read it. Let me make sure that Dan got my new invite. The talent code is what Ken recommends. Let's try this. Give me a test, 1, 2, 3.
Test 1, 2, 3.
And just like that, we're back.
All right.
So you were going to tell us, Brian Wall, we're talking about some recommendations for books while you were gone, Dan. The Gift of Fear is what Brian Wall recommends. Phenomenal. Johnny says, Tom Given's new book on concealed carry. I have got to get that. Nate says, Gun, Bullets, and Gunfights by Jim Cirillo. The Talent Code is what Tim Kelly recommends. Rob is currently reading Violence of Mind. And next will be The Law of Self-Defense by our good friend Andrew Branca. And if you're not watching his coverage of the Kyle Rittenhouse, man, you probably should. He gives a really great dissertation each day as to what is happening with the Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah, Andrew's a rather prolific content creator. He really puts a lot of information out there. I mean, I subscribe. I've been friends with Andrew for nearly 20 years, and I subscribe to his Patreon. You know, I pay full price for it. I highly recommend that to everybody. Of course, our mutual friend TC Fuller, his book as well, Reasonable, Justified, and Necessary. You know, based heavily off his doctoral dissertation. Handgun Combatives by Dave Spalding. Excellent book. I still have a copy of that sitting on my night table that I frequently go through. All the other recommendations, with the exception of Tom Given's book, I think I've read all of what you were reading off.
TC recommends Choke, which is a really great book. He sent me a copy of that. I'm really enjoyed that. And there is Dr. Fuller has put a link to his book. Okay, so let's get back into the questions here, Dan. How did you get into shooting, man?
I mean, like a lot of us as a kid, you know, BB guns and 22s, you know, plinking stuff. And then in, I believe it was 1993, there was a shooting in the New York subway system. I want to say out on Long Island, where a guy just walked onto the subway and shot, I don't know, 25, 30 people. And that really started to spur me into studying, you know, the applications of violence and what is important in armed self-defense. So that was 93. So I was in early high school. And then, of course, you know, my father was a police officer, was police chief at the time. And he had some perspectives on that. And then my uncle on my mom's side, lifelong, you know, gun rights guy, and he had some perspectives on that as the, you know, 1994 assault weapons ban came into being. And I really started looking at the applications of social violence and what is important. Of course, you know, then I joined the Marine Corps in 1996 and spent 4 years in the infantry. And of course, applied violence is sort of the speciality of that branch of service. And that really kind of is what got my journey going. And, you know, like we were talking about just a little bit earlier, print media was the go-to at the time. And I read everything that I could get my hands on. Not a college guy. I have some college credit, but I don't have any degrees. You know, TC would say that my reading level is probably something in the, you know, low grade levels. But I've spent a lot of time reading, and that it's just been a subject matter that I've always been interested in. since that first occurred, 93 is when I really kind of got into not just shooting, not just the mechanics of, sitting at a bench and plugging away at 50 yards or 100 yards or 1,000 yards or whatever, but, the applications of social violence.
And as far as so that's what got you kind of into onto the shooting path. But why did you join the Marine Corps, and kind of what were some of the lessons learned out of your tenure with the Marines?
I joined the Marine Corps because I barely graduated from high school. I concentrated on a lot of stuff that wasn't books. There was not a lot of other options for me at that point in time. And I really enjoyed my time in the Marine Corps. I didn't have much of a desire to get out of the Marine Corps until I met my ex-wife, who convinced me that she didn't want to marry a Marine and travel around the world and such. And so I got out of the Marine Corps, and led to the rest of my life. What I learned in the Marine Corps, I learned that MRE jalapeno cheese goes on everything. And
yes, it does.
How to be miserable and remain optimistic, and a lot about leadership. I learned a lot about leadership. Every person that I had in my chain of command or that I served with taught me something about leadership, either what to do or what not to do. And I'm still in contact to this day with a large portion of the Marines that I served with, largely great dudes. The ones who I'm not really in contact with are the ones I learned what not to do from. So,
let's unpack a little bit of that. What were some of the leadership lessons that really kind of stand out to you? Not necessarily a vignette from what happened or didn't happen, but like this is a good little leadership lesson here.
Leadership by example. Don't expect people to do things you're not willing to do yourself. The standard that you accept is the standard that you walk by. If you expect excellence, then you need to exemplify excellence. And I had some great staff NCOs and officers who really did exemplify that, as well as some small unit leaders as well. That physical fitness is a lifelong journey, that it's not something that you can let go and expect to stay in shape. The whole round as a shape thing is not really something I take with. I'm not in the shape that I used to be in, but I do try. So.
Yeah, those are some good things. The first one I tell that every single firearms instructor development class we do, and that is you can spare the ink of putting your ethos on the board. I'm not interested in reading it. Your ethos is whatever you allow to take place in your presence, and that's your standard. And if you allow mediocrity to rule the day, then that's your standard. Put that on the board. So I 100% agree with you. And I'm glad that you brought that out as like one of the most important things, is that leadership by example piece, which really dovetails nicely, Dan, into my next question. And that is, you have a great deal of instructor time. You have instructor certifications from some of the top folks in the industry. What makes a great instructor, man?
I would say probably what makes a great instructor, of course, knowledge of the subject matter it's necessary. But you can be a mediocre instructor and have a great basis of knowledge. But I would say communication is what makes a truly great instructor, the ability to connect with your audience. That's something that I have always admired, going back to childhood. I grew up Catholic, being of largely Irish descent. I grew up Catholic and went to Catholic church most Sundays. And the church that I went to in South Kingstown, Rhode Island, was called Christ the King. And the priest who was the sort of head priest there, his name was Joe Creedon. And I'll never forget him so long as I live. It was a fairly large church, probably sat, I don't know, maybe 400 people or so. And Joe Creedon's sermons were incredible. They were incredible because he had the ability to speak to every single person there like they were the only person in the audience. And it was something that I thought even back when I was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, I was amazed every Sunday that I sat there that he could speak in such a way to make me feel like I was the only person in the room. And I really feel like a good instructor can connect with their audience in that kind of way, to really speak to a group of 10 or 15 or 20 students on a firing range or in a classroom and connect with them. Make that eye contact, really identify them as being there and you're present with them. And a lot of that, I think a lot of that ability for me comes from training in police work. Being a field training officer, I have to, have rookies sitting in my car with me all the time, and they come from a wide variety of different backgrounds. And getting to know how they learn as individuals is very, very important. I think the onus of getting that information across is on the teacher, on the instructor, to figure out how the student learns rather than this is the information, it's on you to figure out how to retain it. I think that's a really important distinction, as Marine Corps and being the age that we are. I think a lot of the early stuff that we had was, here's the information, it's on you to retain it. And I think we do ourselves as a community a disservice if we approach the material that way.
I totally agree with you, man. I was an instructor at the Infantry Training Battalion. Let's see, I think I got there December in 1992 and kind of started my journey as a professional instructor at that time, almost 30 years ago. And I completely agree with you. What really changed for me to get on board with your way of thinking, Dan, was being a recruiter. So I spent 14 years on recruiting duty. My last, out of my 23 plus years in the Marine Corps, 14 of that was on recruiting duty. And the Marine Corps spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get me certified as a communicator, presenter, sales coach, trainer, etc. And I learned that you're absolutely right. I have to be able to reach people and move them in such a way that compels them to make the kind of decisions I want them to make. Right.
Yep.
And I think that it makes me a better trainer now that I understand some of those things. And to go a little bit further down this road, there's I don't know if you've ever watched the TV show Mad Men.
I've caught a couple of episodes. I haven't watched all of it.
Okay. There is a 3-minute and 26-second presentation by Don Draper. He's the head advertising guy on this show, Mad Men. And there's 5 elements of emotional appeal, how you connect to people emotionally. And he exhibits, I think, 4 of the 5 in this 3 minutes and 26-second sales presentation. And it is incredibly moving. And of course, he wins the thing. But to watch it and to understand how he communicates with his body, how he communicates with his words is an absolute art form, man. And I think that is truly one of the great hallmarks of an instructor, because you and I both know guys, I'm sure, that can run a gun incredibly well.
Yeah.
But they can't pass on that information to get
Nope.
others to do likewise, right?
Right. I've seen many a master class USPSA shooter, a grandmaster class USPSA shooter, and they're like, "Well, just do the thing. Put the thing on the thing and manipulate the thing and hit the thing." It's it's not well articulated at all. It doesn't do an awful lot in terms of presenting information in a way that's digestible to a student.
Yeah, TC says the instructional methodologies that work for a 23-year-old former Marine infantryman are likely different for a 29-year-old housewife. A good instructor will recognize that and adjust accordingly. And I think he's right.
Well, he's probably talking about me, since that's roughly the age that I was when we met. So,
Lieutenant Colonel Dave Brothers is on. Good morning, Dave. He says, late but not dead. Good morning, all. Coin number 1997. Steve says, do you believe that the training of those 65-plus-year-old folks versus younger people? Yes, I am 65 and older.
yeah, training people who come from a different point in life, a different perspective in life. It takes understanding what basis of knowledge that they are bringing to the table. It takes figuring out how they learn, and I really think that's what makes a great instructor. I think in the long term, I think for repeat students, I think for one-on-one types of training, I think mentoring is really very, very important for people who want to follow through on this particular lifestyle. One of the people who's watching, Zach, is a coworker of mine, and he has kind of taken me on as a bit of a mentor. Hello, Andrew Branca. Nice to see you, sir.
We were just talking about you.
We're
talking about how we both spend our hard-earned money to buy your products, and not out begging for a friend's discount because the products are that good, and how folks need to be watching your coverage of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial.
Excellent.
Okay, so what advice would you give to a new instructor, somebody that's just starting out? And I ask this because, with the proliferation of concealed carry handguns, every single day there's probably 100 new CCW instructors popping up across the country. What advice would you give those guys and gals?
Never stop growing as an instructor. That is the number one thing that I would say. I see far too many instructors who get that NRA cert, or that the state mandated instructorship, whatever it is, and that's all that they do. And locally to me, good friend of mine went probably about 2 months ago, went through a local CCW instructor, started at 8 o'clock in the morning, finished at 5 o'clock at night. I think it was about 8:15. He texted me and he said, "What are the odds I get kicked out of this class?" And I was like, "I wouldn't bet against it." He was like, in the first 15 minutes, this guy has said at least 3 things that are completely and totally, FUD lore, just stuck in ancient ways of thinking relative to, what is currently available for information. Specifically, he was referring to the fact that, Mike carries appendix. And this guy, had one of the sort of typical reactions of, well, I wouldn't want a gun pointing at my junk, or whatever it happened to be. Man, if you as an instructor are stuck in that kind of thinking, you've done yourselves and, of course, your students a humongous disservice.
I would love to say, Dan, I haven't seen that, but I would love to say that, but I'm not. And matter of fact, I don't know if my good friend George is watching this morning, but George watches a lot of times and doesn't comment. And recently I was up in New Jersey doing some training with Seeklander, and he calls me late at night. He's like, "Hey man, I've got a good deal on a 40 caliber Glock." I'm like, "Okay, cool." is this a good deal? He tells me the price and everything. And I ask some questions. I finally go, yeah, it sounds like a good deal. What are you going to do with it? He says, my wife. I said, okay, well, you're going to need to get her some training on it. 40 caliber, if she's never shot before, and this is something she's considering carrying, she probably needs to do a little training with it. Right, Dan?
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, okay. And then when he comes over to my house about a week later, it's like, yeah, I sought out this other female trainer, and this is the handgun grip she told my wife to have. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the Danny Glover grip from the late 80s that freaking doesn't work. Yeah, it's just insane. Yeah, and a teacup and saucer. It was some kind of crazy grip. And I'm like, okay, stop. Let me come and we'll take care of her, man. But that is not going to work. Or I see, like you were saying, when I got out of the Marine Corps, Dan, I had to get a concealed carry permit in Tennessee. I turned my one in from South Carolina, where I was stationed at Parris Island. So I went to the guy in town that does all the training, and he is poo-pooing on the isosceles, the modified isosceles position. And I'm like, really? And then when he saw me doing it on the range, he's making fun of me. He's like, oh, you one of them FBI guys? And I'm like, bro, why are you doing this? I outshot you and every other student here today. What? I don't get it.
Yeah, the class I was referring to, the CCW class I was referring to, my buddy went through. I think I went to the same instructor probably 10 or 11 years ago. And when it came time to take my test for the CCW, I think you shoot it. I think in North Carolina it's 3, 5, and 7 yards. So barely beyond arm's distance for me. I got pretty long arms, and I mean I shot a group like this. It was all in a single hole. It would have been basically been the X-ray on a B8, because I only went out to 7 yards. It's not
Right.
a difficult thing at all. And he came by and he failed me. He's like, I can't count your bullet holes. And I was like, really? So he made me shoot it again. And so I literally shot it in rows, because I think it was 5 or 7 rounds at each yard line. And so I shot it in a row at 3, a row at 5, and a row at 7. Just to be a little, I don't know, in your face about it. But it's funny that you see this all the time as an instructor who continues to be a student. You see people who get stuck in certain modes of thinking, and people who poo-poo appendix carry, people who poo-poo weapon lights or red dots or whatever it happens to be. They've stopped learning. And I really hate to see an instructor who stops learning and thinks they know everything, because you don't. You just don't.
Yeah, I think a good example of that is sometimes I'll ask the guests, what is something you've changed your mind about over the course of your journey into self-defense shooting, combative shooting, whatever? Is there something that sticks out as like, Rich, 2 years ago I changed my mind on that? Is there anything like that?
Appendix carry is my primary one. I'd carried strong side IWB for, I guess, about 16 years, and I had a student coming out to the range with me. He was on the local SRT SWAT team, and he carried appendix. And he was a young guy, I don't know, 23, 4, something like that. And I was like, I don't know about that. I've seen that a lot lately, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, why don't you give it a shot, man? And I was like, I've carried in the same spot for 16 years. I'm really comfortable with my, with my speed on target, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, all right, man. I was like, and I thought to myself, I was like, you're doing it. You're doing the thing. You're getting stuck. And so he happened to carry the same gun that I do, carried a Glock 19. And so I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. And so I decided to be at least a little bit academic about it. And, I put myself on the timer and did, 10 of, my standard draw out of IWB. And then I put his gun on, and I did about 10 practice draws just to kind of get the hand motion down and everything. And then I put myself on a timer for 10 more. And I cut, I don't know, on average, probably about a quarter second out of my draw, just in that short amount of time, not doing any formalized training on AIWB. And I was like, yeah, this is faster. This is better. And I changed the way I dress around the gun. For the longest time, I had an open front garment because I was carrying on my strong side. And now I wear pretty much exclusively closed front garments because I carry AIWB all the time now. So I've been carrying that way since, I guess, 2016, 2017 now. Haven't changed.
It's funny. We do onboarding sessions, Dan, with our new members that want it. So yesterday I did an onboarding session with a gentleman from New Hampshire, and he was asking me about, because he's new to concealed carry, and how do I carry, and what are the merits of the different positions. So we had a long conversation about it, but and that's something for me, man. I've been carrying that way since probably 1995, 96. We didn't even have a name for it back then. There was appendix. I don't even know when that name come up, but back then it was like Mexican carry, felony carry.
Felon carry.
Yeah, yeah. But I doing judo back then, I saw the merits of, if I'm on my back, or, there was some other things that led me down that road.
Yep.
But yeah, Andrew Branca asks, should the instructor be able to perform on-demand cold at a high level of proficiency the exercises asked of the students? I ask because not all instructor development courses believe this should be a reasonable expectation.
Yes, absolutely. If and that kind of goes back to the leadership by example sort of thing. I had a class that I taught, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, and demonstrated the drills and everything. The class that I taught was a movement centric class. It was moving with a gun. Doing lateral movements, doing movements to the rear, doing movements forward, and I completely jacked up one of the demonstrations, and I think that is a huge fear for a lot of instructors, especially new instructors, of, well, what if I miss? Well, what if I don't meet, the time standard or whatever it happens to be? The only people who never miss are people who never shoot. Everybody misses. Robbie Leatham misses at some point in time. Mike Seeklander misses at some point in time. I mean, I've never personally seen it, but I know it happens. We're human beings. We're imperfect. You can be a very, very high level jujitsu practitioner and, not be able to sink an Americana on somebody that you should be able to do it. Everybody has those days where your body's just not working the way you want it to. That's life. You should demonstrate the drills that you expect of the student, and you should have a high expectation of success. You should be able to do what you are requiring of the student. There are a lot of drills out there. There are a lot of tests out there that are very, very difficult. Like Scott Jedelinski's black belt standards for pistol, extremely high level stuff. Very, very difficult to do, especially on demand. A sub 1 second draw at 7 yards to an A zone on a USPSA. Sure, I can do that probably 3 times out of 10, but 7 times out of 10, I'm not hitting that. Sub 2 second from concealment bill drills, A zone on a USPSA. That's a high level of expectation. That's really, really difficult to do. 3 second, sure, I'll do 3 seconds all day. But you start getting down under, like, for me, 225 on a bill drill, keeping it clean on an A zone, you're really starting to move, especially from concealment. Those are very, very difficult standards. But if you're doing something like a what is it? Bill Wilson's The Test, or
5x5.
no, the 10 drill.
Oh, okay.
To be able to keep all that in the black, even from concealment at 10 yards, that's a pretty reasonable expectation. You should be able to demonstrate that. Hey, Kent Howard, nice to see you. So yeah, I do, Andrew. Thanks for the question. I do think that an instructor should demonstrate what they expect. There are instructors out there who do not do that, and I think it's because of a fear of failure in front of their students. But if you fail, you should be able to pick it up and be like, you know what, this is why I jacked that up. I snagged my draw, or my hands landed wrong on the gun and I shot all over the target. Whatever you should be able to identify what you've done wrong, because if you can't identify what you have done wrong, you're not going to be able to identify what your students are doing wrong, and therefore correct them to make them better.
Yeah. Kent says not demoing is a mortal sin. I agree with you, Kent. And also, Frank says, yeah, even if we fail, we learn. So, even if you fail in front of your students, or you fail to perform to your whatever the given level is, that's an opportunity for learning for you and the student. Would you agree?
I totally agree. 100%.
What's the best piece of shooting advice you ever got, Dan?
In terms of straight shooting advice, I don't know. Most of the shooting advice that I have gotten has been highly contextual. Shooting at 500 yards with iron sights is very, very different than, trying to pull off a sub 1 second draw at 7 yards. So a lot of the shooting advice, a lot of the mechanical instruction that I have received from some of the best people in the country is very, very contextual. So I don't know I can come up with a single best piece of shooting advice. The thing that sticks out in my mind, though, is our mutual friend TC Fuller got me in touch with Dave Spalding of now Handgun Combatives, and back then I think this was 2003 or 2004, and he came to Vermont for a class. And part of his lecture that he does is a lecture on mindset. And it was one of those times that it kind of brought me back to, sitting in the pew at Catholic Church and listening to Joe Creedon, because it really felt like in that, 16 or 17 people who were sitting in that classroom that he was talking directly to me. And I didn't know him like I do now. Dave's an old friend and mentor at this point in time. But he talked about a scene from the movie The Shootist with John Wayne, and I'm assuming you've seen that.
A long time ago.
I don't know anybody who's older than me who hasn't seen The Shootist. And John Wayne takes Ron Howard out for a shooting lesson, and in short order, teaches the kid all the mechanics of how to shoot a gun. And the kid shoots nearly as well as John Wayne does, who's an aging gunfighter in the movie. And Ron Howard's character is like, wait a second, like, you've killed like 20 people in gunfights, and I nearly tied you shooting. What's going on here? And John Wayne's character talks about mindset. He says, friend, there's no one out there shooting back at you. He said, it's not a matter of being fast or even accurate that really counts. It's being willing. And he said, most men, regardless of cause or need, just aren't willing. They will blink an eye or draw a breath before they pull the trigger, and I won't. And I really think that developing a mindset that is being willing to fight and being capable of fighting is probably more important than any of the mechanics of how to run a gun.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. It's an interesting story. It's one my dad tells a story very similar to that allegedly occurred on a movie set when Audie Murphy started making movies. And for those of you that are of a younger age, you may not know Audie Murphy was the most decorated soldier in World War II, maybe in the history of America, the most decorated soldier. But he becomes a Hollywood actor, and he's on a movie set, and they've got a couple of what we call prop guns, which are actually real guns. And one of the movie stars had been practicing his quick draw. He's like, Audie, I've noticed I'm faster than you are on the quick draw. And Audie's like, yeah, you are. And he starts taking the blanks out of the gun. And he's talking about, yeah, I'm faster. I've been training more than you. And he's like, starts loading them with live rounds, tosses a gun to him, says, let's go out in the street. He said, and the actor who was telling the story, his blood just ran cold. He's like, no way. I suddenly realized in the flick of a switch, this guy wasn't playing.
Nope. Yeah, you don't play with somebody who's killed more people than cancer.
Yeah.
That's it. Most people don't have that kind of mindset, and certainly, I don't think you'd get away with that these days. Somebody would sue you for something like that, for hurting their feelings or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, it's true. I think it teaches a valuable lesson that there's a difference between playing and the real thing. So I think this is a great segue for my next question. That is like, is there any other way we could describe mindset other than the few little stories we've already shared? Or is there, how do you create and maintain mindset? Because as I've said before, if I could write a book about it and really get you to have the mindset, I could make $1 million overnight. Everybody's searching for it, but how do you get it?
Boy, you need to read Violence of Mind. I think Varg Freeborn does a really, really great job of getting people to understand that there are people out there who do not think like you, and the whole wolves and sheep metaphor has been kind of memed to death with the internet, but it's true. God, it's true. Most people out there just don't understand the really predatory kind of violence some people are capable of. I remember a bunch of years ago, I worked a stabbing, and I showed up, and this guy was leaking from, I don't know, 23 or 24 stab wounds, and he didn't even know a knife was involved until after about like the third or fourth hit. He thought he was just getting hit, but he's actually punctured a lot. And he was just he was actually more in shock about the fact that it happened than the fact that he was leaking a lot, because it was about a parking spot. He confronted some guy about parking odd, or I don't remember. It's probably 2007 or 2008, and this guy just approached him and started hitting him, and he was covering up, and he's like, oh my, I don't understand. And this guy just stabbed him a whole bunch of times over a parking spot. That's not a rational response. That's not a rational kind of thinking. And there are people out there who are not rational people, and they will react in a way that is not that doesn't seem real to you. If you don't understand that there are those people out there, you're not going to be able to develop a mindset that prepares you for that. If you don't understand that there are people out there who will either victimize you for their own gains, or who will react to a challenge in a what they perceive to be a challenge in a way that is completely outside what you believe to be a normal or rational way of thinking, you're doing yourself a disservice. So developing that mindset takes understanding that there are people out there who think much, much differently than you.
I totally agree with that. And I think one of the greatest things that taught me that was the year I spent as a corrections officer, working in a prison, working in a pod alone behind multiple locked doors with 48 inmates that were high, what we called high close custody. They were, the worst of the worst, and just interacting with them all day long. It's not like you sit behind a desk with your feet up in order to find out what's going on. I'm currently walking around the pod having conversations with people, and you look at him and go, this person looks like he could be my neighbor. He must be, just a normal guy that got caught up in a bad situation. And then you talk to him for a little bit. And once the facade falls away, you realize, like Dr. William April always said, these people don't think like you.
Nope, they do not. And that's another source that people really should look to, is the late great Dr. William April. His lectures were unbelievably informative.
I'll tell a story. I think I may have told it one other time in the 6 years we've been doing a podcast, but it's a quick little story just to give an example of how they don't think like us. There was a gentleman, we'll call him Luke. And I eventually made my way down to where they had me take over the whole. So I ran the pod, which was the disciplinary segregation pod, where all the inmates that can't get along well with others, they said, Rich, I want you to take that Marine Corps leadership and apply it to these guys. I'm like, okay, roger that. And I had this inmate, his name was Luke, and he gets his classification. His 30 days in the hole is up. He's going back to a high close custody pod because he's a violent inmate. But I swear to God, man, he sounds like you or I. If he was on this podcast and somebody said he was a car salesman, you would believe it. I mean, he just looked normal.
Mm-hmm.
But he says, hey, Officer Brown, I can't go down to pod 2D or whatever it was. And I said, okay, what's the problem? He's like, I've got an enemy down there. If classification looks again, they'll see that I cannot be put in the same cell or the same pod with whatever the other inmate was because of gang affiliation or whatever. I said, okay.
Uh-huh.
So I talked to classification. They get his pod changed. He goes and gets his property box, and he's walking down to his pod. And he's like, hey, Officer Brown, I really appreciate it, sir. Have a great day. I'm like, roger that. He walks out. About, I don't know, Dan, 5-10 minutes later, the alarm goes off, facility-wide lockdown, and I hear over the radio chatter is, oh my God, this guy's bleeding out, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, holy crap, what's going on, Next thing you know, here comes Luke getting carried back to the pod, and he's covered in blood, and they've got him handcuffed and shackled. And he comes through the pod screaming, I'm sorry, Officer Brown. I'm sorry, Officer Brown. And I'm like, what in the hell? I go to his cell and I'm like, what happened? And he's like, I had to use you, Officer Brown. I'm sorry. I'm like, you used me? He said, yeah, I had to get in there and try to kill that guy, whatever his name was. And I'm like, oh my God. And he had a shank, and he went into the cell and slammed the door in with this other inmate while he was sleeping, and tried to stab him to death. And you know why? Because that inmate had wrote his ex-wife a letter or something like that. And I'm like, wow. Doesn't matter what these people look like. I had another inmate who they're allowed to have 3 pencils at all times. He sharpened 3 pencils, wrapped them up with a piece of tape, and then walked over and stabbed this guy in his neck, trying to kill him over a card game. So again, if these people have the mindset, man, if you don't have that kind of mindset, good luck when you meet someone like that.
Right.
Alan Kelly says, and sometimes we have to think like them to understand them. Of course, Alan Kelly spent 30 plus years as a Virginia State police officer. With the current state of the union, Dan, I'm sure I don't have to tell you, we're in some weird times, brother. And
yes,
I want to know what the average American can do to be prepared for where we're heading. How can they be more resilient, harder to kill, wherever you want to take that?
The average American. Oh, the average American probably can't climb 2 flights of stairs without being out of breath. So I would say that the average American should probably do something about getting in a little bit better shape. You know, if you expect things to get, as our friend Andrew Branca says, sporty in the near future, um, you don't have to be a marathon runner. You don't have to be, running a 4.240. But you should be able to climb a few flights of stairs, maybe jog a mile, maybe lift your body weight. Um, you should be in a little bit better shape than you currently are, the average American. If you are talking about being prepared on a daily basis, man, as you're well aware, do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, man. I in terms of a overall, my buddy Zach that I was talking about earlier, he asked me, I don't know, probably a year ago. He's like, man, what, the training that we get at work is lackluster. It's, box checking. If you were going to recommend a single martial art to get into, what would you get into? And I told him, I said, no question, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he said, why? And I know that means that I have taught him well because he asked why. Because why is super important, as you're well aware. And I said, more than any other martial art, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will teach you to think under pressure. Because when somebody grabs a hold of you and you've got 8 or 10 seconds of oxygen left in your brain, thinking through that problem requires a lot of ability to stay calm, to think through that pressure. All right, what do I have to do? I got to tuck my chin. That sort of thing. I spent most of my martial arts time, doing boxing and Muay Thai, and I think that while that is certainly important, being able to strike is good. Especially, I'm a tall guy and I got long limbs, so if I can keep people at a distance, I stand a real solid chance. Those long limbs are less advantageous when it ends up on the ground because now people have levers to use on me, and that's not an advantage, as you're well aware. So yeah, those are the two things off the top of my head. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of people being armed. If you're gonna be armed, you have to invest heavily in training. My generalized piece of advice for people who elect to go armed, whatever your first concealed carry handgun and all the bullets and accoutrement that go with it, holster, belt, etc. Whatever that amount of money is, double it and spend that on training your first year. Because if you don't, I was talking to somebody online recently, and I said, if you buy a violin, you don't immediately go sit in your front yard and give concerts to your neighborhood because A, you would look foolish, and B, you're going to annoy the crap out of your neighbors. Going about armed, the gravity of that decision is so much more, it's so much heavier. You need to involve yourself in being trained because it's not a matter of annoying your neighbors. It's a matter of not living through a situation or potentially killing the wrong person. Launching a couple of 9mm rounds down the block is, you have to be legally and morally accountable for everything you do with a gun. Do you watch Active Self-Protection, John Corria's channel on YouTube?
Yeah, I did some videos. Mike Seeklander and I did some videos with him out in Arizona a few months back.
Yeah, that guy has done an amazing service for everybody,
Hmm.
and breaking down a lot of the shooting videos. I think he has a library of something like 30,000 videos now.
Hmm.
And when you get into numbers that big, you can really start to see some patterns that emerge, and things that actually happen in armed confrontations. And one of the things that has been most revealing to me is the number of people who pull out a gun and use it as a talisman to ward off evil. Um, Sorry, man, this isn't Harry Potter. Your canic isn't gonna ward off the bad guys because they picked you out as a victim for a reason.
That's right. I wrote an article about that's funny you say that because a lot of people think that, in an assault, I have to win the assault. But let's talk about what winning looks like. All I want the attacker to do is adopt another posture other than fight, right?
Yep.
If I counterattack or counter assault, I'm not only having to win that, I'm having to change his mindset because he selected me because of some preconceived idea that, oh, this cat is weak.
Yep.
Now, so I have to overcome that and overcome the physical fight in order to get him to adopt another posture other than to fight me.
Yep.
So I think a lot of people don't consider that. You were pre-selected for a reason. And when we had Dr. April on the show many years ago, he talked about that. And if you're watching this morning or listening to us on a podcast, wherever you're consuming this content, please go back and listen to the show we did with William April, because he actually interviewed these people that commit these acts of violent crime and has talked to them. And his body of work seems to indicate that you were selected as someone who they can, get their resources from quickly and easily with little to no fight.
Yep.
Uh, Dr. Fuller says it drives me bonkers that we have a resource like the ASP library, yet so rarely do we alter our training paradigms to account for the information we have in mind. And I've talked to John about this before. I wish if I could go back in time as someone who does have a degree in social psychology and give him a spreadsheet and say, as you review these, put tick marks here
Mm-hmm.
as to what you see. And then let's run some data at the end of that 30,000 videos. And then we can do what TC is indicating. We redesign our training to include some of these real world gunfights. Now, of course, we're
Yep.
only seeing the small segment that are actually captured
Right.
on video. But at the same time, I think we can learn a lot.
Yeah. Once the whole you can read a couple of stories, you can have an experience or two, um but the whole N of one thing, you could be looking at an outlier. When you have 30,000 incidents that have been recorded from one angle or another, or multiple angles sometimes, um, you can really start to extract some data of what is probable, what are things that actually occur, what's important in terms of training. John Correa doesn't carry a weapon mounted light. Why? Because he's never seen one used in a citizen self-defense incident. That's data based. That's a decision based on real data. Um, you it's hard to find fault with something like that.
Yeah, but again, it's a virtue of, if that's your job, you're just a citizen. I mean, you and I both know. I mean, when I was a police officer, we didn't have weapon mounted lights, but I
Right.
had my light out a lot, whether because sometimes I was working on third shift, and sometimes I was working on first shift, and law dictated where I went.
Mm-hmm.
But for the average civilian, that's not a bad position. And to your point about we need to make decisions based on the data that's in front of us. And it reminds me of, have you seen this? It's a diagram of like a B-17 bomber in World War II. And they all the bombers that flew back to England, you're shaking your head, yeah.
Yes, I have seen it.
Oh, it's great, man. Because for those that haven't seen or don't know what we're talking about, all the B-17s, I guess it was B-17s, that made it back across the English Channel back, they developed a diagram of where these things had been hit. And somebody said, oh my gosh, what we should do is, we see where the holes generally occur. Let's put some additional armor plating over that. And someone said, no.
No.
the lesson is not that. These are the planes that made it back.
Yep.
The planes that didn't make it back had hits where these are not there. So I think looking at the data dispassionately can teach us a whole lot. And I think that a lot of firearms trainers or self-defense instructors don't dig into the uniform. Is it the Uniform Crime Report that the Department of Justice puts out?
Yeah, the FBI's UCRs.
Yeah, the UCRs, man. The UCRs, and you can go back and extract a lot of really meaningful data. And that's one of the ways that we compel our students, right? When we give them facts.
Yep. Yeah, I remember having to go. I think you had to do a FOIA request to get the UCRs a long time ago. Before they got published immediately to the internet. It's easy to dismiss anecdotal evidence by a single person based on lived experience as generalizable. It's much more difficult when your sample size starts hitting the 30,000 mark. Thank you, Dr. Fuller. Yeah, 100% agree. But the other thing is that you have to consider is, what if you're the outlier? What if you're the outlier? And one of the sort of online arguments that's popular now is having to do with weapon-mounted lights. Of what if you're the outlier? And I'll be honest with you, I have a couple of reasons that I utilize a weapon-mounted light as a daily carry. One is, as a police officer, I carry a weapon-mounted light, right? So why have one in one situation and not the other? The second reason really is that a weapon-mounted light, specifically the one I have chosen, creates a muzzle standoff. Meaning if I end up in an entangled gunfight and I'm in a situation like the Trayvon Martin shooting, where I'm grounded and somebody's got me in a full mount sort of position, and I am entangled with them. I carry a semi-automatic pistol, not a revolver. So if the muzzle gets depressed on my semi-auto pistol, that creates a dead trigger, and I can't pull that trigger. A weapon-mounted light creates a standoff distance, and that's really the primary go-to reason for me to EDC a weapon-mounted light. What if you're the outlier? What if you're not the one of the 30,000? What if you're 30,001?
Yeah, great point. Mark says, new to AWS, listening based on a recommendation. Great content. Looking forward to future broadcasts. Thank you for hosting and a great guest. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Jamie says, Dan is all about the lumens. Jesse says, having the ability to interpret the data is a skill that's not necessarily discussed enough. Yeah, Jesse, you're absolutely right. TC says, of course, outliers happen, no argument, but when it comes to training, I would suggest that when you are making compromise decisions based on real world constraints, such as time and money, you prioritize the most likely events and work your way out from there.
Sure. With my classes, a lot of classes, specifically handgun classes that I have been through over the course of the years, I would say somewhere on the order of 15%, maybe 20% of class time is spent on reloads, doing handgun reloads. They don't happen. They don't. In a law enforcement context, yes, they do happen on occasion. They're pretty low probability even in law enforcement context. But why are we concentrating so much on that skill in a self-defense type class, on an everyday carry type class? I don't know. The only thing I can think of is like filler time. It is a skill that a proficient gun handler needs to have. Certainly if you're a gamer like I am, USPSA guy, IDPA guy, Steel Challenge guy, whatever it happens to be, then yeah, reloads are important. You can certainly shave off a lot of time having a very, very good reload. When it comes to self-defense, it's just not a very important skill. You really shouldn't be spending any more than a small percentage of time on that.
Yeah, true. Very true. As far as where's all this lawlessness going, Dan? I mean, we look around ourselves here in America. And I had some friends, actually, who's a colonel in the Marine Corps. We went and visited them. They were stationed over in Italy, and they just came back to America, and they're like, "What in the hell is going on here?" I'm like, "Yeah, welcome back. Things have changed in the past 2 or 3 years. Where do you see all this going?"
Lacking any kind of precognition. I mean, I can hazard a guess or two. I would say the probability of extensive social disorder is increasing. I think there is a strong probability that in the not very distant future, you could see a sort of a perfect storm of events occurring. Currently we have this nationwide shortage of goods due to the shipping crisis off the coast of California. You combine that with maybe a non-favorable verdict in some sort of shooting incident, whether it be law enforcement or the Kyle Rittenhouse trial that's going on. Combine that with a natural disaster that occurs somewhere, an earthquake somewhere. You could see large scale social disorder, shortages of goods, riots, large swaths of America that are basically lawless. I could foresee something like that occurring. And for your average American who's not prepared, doesn't think about things like that the way I think about things, you could be in for a rough time.
Yeah, you could. And that's why, getting an opportunity to talk to people like you, Dan, is so important. And I hope that people are listening to what you're saying this morning, because I think we are in for rougher times. I mean, what's going on with China and Taiwan could easily blow up into something really bad, because as we talked about on this show and others, the semiconductors that come out of Taiwan that fuel our economy, I think 60 or 70% of the world's semiconductors are made in Taiwan. And if suddenly China takes Taiwan, a lot of the things we take for granted, because everything in our modern economy has a semiconductor in it. This microphone does, this mouse here does, obviously the computer does, the camera, my car, your car, everything has it. So we could definitely see something on the macro level affecting our nation. And of course, in the micro level, like you said, whether it's the Kyle Rittenhouse, the Officer Roth trial is going to be coming up soon. That could have some serious implications. I want to touch on one of the things that Frank said before I get to my final question for you this morning, Dan. And I'm going to have to do round 2 with you, man. We could go all day. This is a great conversation. But Frank says developing skills to a level of automaticity frees up bandwidth for other skills. And that right there could almost be the tagline for the American Warrior Society. Frank, well said, man, because that's exactly what we're talking about. Training to that level where your body is just making, it's just reacting. You're not thinking about it. I remember one time, one of the first times I drew my firearm as a police officer. I'm in my mid-20s, and I remember the gun came out so fast, finger prepped the trigger. I didn't shoot, but I just remember like looking at the gun going, I have a gun just like that. Oh my God, that's my gun. It's like, it happened so fast. I didn't even have to think about it. It's like there was some sort of mental line that was crossed. The guy did something that startled me, and the gun just came out, and I'm already prepping, taking the slack out, getting ready to take the shot. So my brain was able to make other decisions and de-escalate and all this other stuff. But Frank has a great point. Would you agree?
100%. Was that Frank Horvath?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like him. Yeah, I mean, Frank's 100% correct. Automaticity is what is what the goal is when it comes to self-defense. with anything, I mean, as you're aware, with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you don't have time to think about a sprawl when somebody goes for a double leg. That needs to happen instinctively. Boxing or Muay Thai, if you don't know how to, or not don't know how to, if you haven't sunk head movement, you're going to get punched in the face a lot. That's why my nose looks the way it does. I hadn't sunk head movement very well, and I got my nose broken a bunch. All of these things, if they're not trained to that level of automaticity, you're battling two people. You're battling your opponent. You're battling yourself.
I 100% couldn't have said it better myself. So to tell us about, your company, Dan, and what the future of your company is and where people can find you.
Well, it's not my company. I work for Apache Solutions. The Apache Solutions belongs to Tim Kelly. He is the owner and lead trainer of Apache Solutions. I highly recommend you get a hold of Tim Kelly. I will provide you his contact information to have him on as a guest. Where Apache Solutions is going, I'm certainly not in control of that. I got on with Apache a couple of years ago, and I really hope that Apache's headed to a national stage. Teaching all over the country. That's certainly what we have spoken about anyway. The focus for Apache Solutions and for Dan Brady in particular is training people with the everyday carry handgun. My particular focus is basically from 3 yards back. I don't teach any entangled gunfighting. I don't think I have the mastery of that subject that is necessary to really teach it. People like Kelly McCann, people like Rich Nance, people like Craig Douglas,
Cecil Birch, yeah.
Cecil Birch, those guys, those are the guys to go to. Another thing that Apache really does is finds these instructors who teach stuff that we don't and hosts them. Apache Solutions is headquartered in Yadkinville, North Carolina, which is 30-40 minutes west of Winston-Salem. Got a real nice range there, and it's just a great place to train. One of the things that really attracted me to Apache Solutions is just this energy, just how it feels to be there and train with these guys. Frank Horvat's one of them. He's watching. Great people, very diligent students, who put a huge amount of time and energy into this craft, into this subject matter. When I met Tim, part of it is that, part of my my desire to be involved with him and his company is, he's also a jarhead, and we actually served in the same unit about 10 years apart, in 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, and the focus and energy that all of this cadre of instructors brings to this subject matter is not like anything I've seen before.
Good, definitely. So some links are in here. Skip has given us a link. You can see that below.
Yep.
I'll also make sure they're in today's show notes. So where can people find you? What's the best thing to do there?
If you want to find me in particular, just email me. My email hasn't changed in a great number of years. It's my name, Dan Brady, number 78@gmail.com. If you want to get a hold of me specifically, or you can get me through Apache. either on Facebook, Apache Solutions LLC on Facebook. That's about it.
All right. Well, Dan, once again, man, I'm not going to put you on the spot and make you promise you'll give me a round two, but I got more stuff to talk about for sure with you.
Hey, if you're willing to have me, I'm willing to talk. Talking's one of my few strong points. I'm pretty good at running my mouth. As my dad likes to say, the Irish are a loquacious race.
Yes, we are. Jamie says, happy early birthday, Marines. Absolutely. Happy early birthday. Gerald says, thanks for your time. Mark Few says, thanks, guys. Great show. TC Fuller says, great show, gents. Be safe. Folks, be safe. And remember, the fight is coming. Be ready.